Well, that's what I get. Well, this is about as loud as I think I'm going to get. So, I think that might be okay. Okay, yes, this stupid thing I think is working. Is that what it sounds like? Just water dripping? It's supposed to be like a ticking clock for ambience that I just ripped off of YouTube. Because it's really weird having dead air. But there's no like echo or reverb or anything, so yeah, it just kind of sounds like tapping or something. Also, I've been trying to mess around with like noise suppression and noise gates, which is supposed to filter out at least some of the background noise. I guess I could try that. Let me see if I can find something. Let me know how loud my typing is while I'm doing this. That's way too loud. Way too noisy. So you can't hear typing. That's good at least. I also I become a lot more self-conscious of the noises I make. Like if I smack my lips or like burp in my mouth or something. That gets kind of let's give laid back a try. Maybe not. I don't know. How do you even do that? This whole streaming thing is a mess. It's never gonna work. Public domain music. I figured I was on Twitch and I figured I'd try YouTube because I was like, that makes more sense for my content. But when the first time you stream on YouTube, there's like a stream button and it just automatically opens up your webcam. And so I'm now sitting here like, man, am I really that ugly? That explains a lot. But whatever. Whatever. I'm trying to think like what is it called? It's like I think it's smooth jazz. Let's see. This guy says this is smooth jazz. Okay, how does that sound? Okay, I just adjusted that level a little bit. Does that sound better for the music? Well, the thing is I'm like I said, I just don't want any dead air if I can help it. And I like the idea of something neutral like a grandfather clock ticking, but It's surprisingly difficult to find a good sound effect of that. And I'm not gonna pay some stupid website like $20 for their stupid sound effect pack that they probably stole from somewhere else, you know. But whatever. I'm kind of butthurt. People are like, "Yeah, dude, if you start streaming, I'll be in." But like the people that said that, now they're gone. I don't know where they are. They're offline. So it's just me and you until you go to bed. And I'm just sitting here playing with myself. The music's kind of nice. I think I had honestly like my grandfather, Grandpa Carl, he had that grandfather clock. And I was even thinking, I was like, man, that'd be so cool to just get that and just like record it or put it in the stream somehow and just have like a live grandfather clock. But yeah, I did give them heads up. That's why they're a bunch of jerks. That's okay though. I don't expect the world to stop for me. And to be honest, I don't know. But thank you for coming on, Kagan. I promise I'll make it up to you. No, I mean there was this girl in my ward, like she's kind of that one where Josh and Sarah are giving me crap about her, like you should ask her out or whatever. But she's usually pretty on the spot. I tell her about the stream, and I text her earlier. I was like, "Yeah, you want to hop on?" She's like, "Yeah, sure." And then like an hour later, I sent her the link, and now I haven't heard back from her. So I'm all alone, all by myself. But anyways, if you have to go, I don't want to keep you. I'll probably just sit here and you know do whatever. I mean, I probably won't, but she's just hanging out in a gun store. What is she doing? Well, professional victims. What are you gonna do? Ah, I don't know. Like as far as a subreddit goes, I don't even want to spend time on Reddit. Like I get stuff on there from my news feed on Google. It's like, hey, you like this thing? Maybe you'll like this random post from Reddit. Then I'll read it. Yeah, that's okay. But I don't know. I don't know if I can stomach them. And this thing, like, I'm almost hesitant because in my mind, I'm like, okay, if I get like a steady stream going, maybe I won't even make a living, but maybe I can make a little extra cash. And I was even thinking that if I'm gonna be an author, that I could do this instead of a blog, where I just interact with people, be like, hey, whatever. But I don't know. For some, like, I still kind of hesitate. Like, I almost have to drag myself on a stream, and I don't know if that's like a sign that maybe I'm hesitating or I don't know. Maybe I'm just making stuff up. But So I think they do record, and I think you can edit them, and you can just be like, you can upload them or edit them or something. And I was thinking I might try and do that, where I would like read a story or something and then upload that to YouTube separately. But I also wonder if like I should um first get some actual recording equipment because I'm literally just I I plugged in my earphones, but I think the laptop might actually just use the built-in mic by default. I don't know if they're actually being used, which is a bit strange. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. But at the same time, I feel a little silly just sitting here reading to myself. I mean, stuff like this, streaming, it's inherently silly anyway, I think. It just feels weird. Maybe I'm just awkward, but and then of course trying to find like something to read, but yeah. I mean, it's an investment if you're going to take it seriously. And I don't know, maybe I don't have to. There's this guy on YouTube called Mr. Medicare. He's not like a big deal, but um like he does not use a professional mic. He just uses like a gaming headset. But he's got like, 300, 400,000 subscribers and I think he makes pretty good money on like Patreon and stuff. So I don't know, maybe it doesn't actually matter that much, at least not for now. But then the question is like what do I read, because I have a big book of like fairy tales and that was kind of what I was reading at first. But I mean, these can only be so interesting. Yeah, you're probably right. I'm sure most people would just use it for like white noise, not even thinking about it. I get like, I get so self-conscious about it though. Also, yeah, you kind of are having a conversation 30 seconds ago. I literally just received that message of you saying that. So I think there is like a 30, 40 second delay. That's just the stream. But I'd kind of even thought that maybe I would do something almost a little more academic, where like I would take literature or at least some kind of book that I'm being assigned in college. And as I read through it, if I find that it's interesting to like kind of go over it on the stream. Like I got this book for this history class and it's not a textbook, it's an actual like book. It's like on its own, it's like 17 bucks. It's this tiny little book. It's all about the Salem witch hunts and it looks like cool as crap. I ended up having to change classes, so I don't have to read it, but I really want to because I think it might turn out to be interesting. Anyways, yeah, 50 Shades of Grey. I'm sure YouTube would really appreciate that one. I'm kind of curious about stuff like that. I mean, there are good books coming out where I'm curious about them, like a Handmaid's Tale, which is a show on a Hulu, I think. But people love the show, but they're saying like everyone says like, oh, the book is just amazing, even though the show is great in its own right. So I mean, something like that might work. At first, I was kind of reluctant because I was like, well, I don't want to do anything that's not public domain because I don't want to get in trouble. But A, this isn't like me pirating some movie. You know, book publishers are not going to be looking for some guy reading their book on a stream. And B, as long as I'm talking about it, it's more like a book club than it is like, you know, uh, me pirating a book or some stupid crap like that. I mean, I could always just read terrible fan fiction. That's fun. Or just do dramatic readings. Like I've sent you a couple of those videos of that guy just like reading Pornhub comic or comments or whatever. Those are fun. Or the one guy on Yahoo Answers. Am I pregnant? Am I pregant? You ever see that video? I go back to that video every once in a while. Have I really been streaming for 30 minutes? See, I'm wondering about that because like there's fair use, which is like you can use copyrighted material as long as you do something with it. Like if I'm literally just doing an audiobook of something, that's illegal technically. But theoretically, if I were to just read excerpts and then talk about them, that would be like a movie review on YouTube. You know, like some guy takes apart M. Night Shyamalan movies and he's like, "Oh, this part is dumb." He's not pirating the movie; he's commenting on it. At least that's the idea. I'm sure I'd still get sued to oblivion, but you know, life is short. Yeah. So I thought that would be kind of fun to do. There was I have this poem. It's not like a Walt Whitman poem, like a satire poem, and I was reading it on a stream once, and I was talking about it because it's a really interesting one because it's like political satire. Yeah, a weekly book review. That's kind of what I was wondering about, like doing book reports or a book club sort of thing. But that would involve me reading regularly, which is something I may or may not struggle with. Anyways, so I had that poem, and it's from like the 17th century or something. So I had a chance to actually talk about stuff, talk about how like it was how it affected society then, but how it's still relevant and all this other stuff. That was a lot of fun. At least I enjoyed it. I don't know. I don't care if anyone else did. It's for anyone else, but because like I looked on YouTube. Obviously, there wasn't anything like this stream on Twitch. I looked on YouTube and I could not find a lot of channels that did like book reviews. Occasionally, like there's like one guy I followed where he made fun of Ready Player One, um, which was that movie that came out and it was based on a book. And he normally he reviews like movies, but he decided to review the book because he's like the book is just terrible. And that's like the only review for a book that I could find. So I don't know. Maybe there's a niche to be tapped into. But I'd like to tap into you, handsome. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. There's someone else on the stream. Now they're going to be thinking I'm weird. Oh well. I don't know. Maybe I should just start reading fan fiction. Do I really want to go down that road though? I'm trying to be a Christian, you know? Trying to get away from that life. Well, whatever. You are right. Like most people probably aren't. I mean, I did look up public domain books. Like I was researching to find out what I could legally read without ramifications. And I found some that were okay. In fact, I think I can pull up the list. But yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm reading anything super popular. Um, Tank Cole like following. Yeah, that's a good idea. If I can find. Okay, yes. Yeah, so there's stuff that I recognize. There's things like Aesop's Fables, The Secret Garden, Henry David Thoreau. There's even poems like Leaves of Grass. Uh, I had even thought about just like going onto Wikipedia and finding interesting articles and not necessarily reading them word for word, although I could do that, but like talking about a certain person. Like I was doing, I guess you'd call it research. I was reading about F. Scott Fitzgerald, the writer, and that guy was really interesting. So I thought that maybe I would just spend some time talking about him, but I don't know. I mean, I don't even think it matters. I think I could honestly read out of any random book, and as long as I don't say the title of it, no one's gonna like bother to find out, you know? Maybe I shouldn't do that because that's probably highly illegal, but you know it's really stupid? I get kind of gassy when I'm nervous. So like when I'm just sitting alone in my room not doing anything, I don't like burp or fart a lot, but then I get on stream and suddenly like I'm like, "Oh no, I have to mute the mic. I'm going to burp like 20 times." Pornographic movie reviews. I think there's a guy that does that actually. What is his name? It's like the Cinema Snob, I think. Maybe he doesn't review porn, I don't know. If I really wanted to get annoying, I guess I could just read the Bible. Point out plot holes. I think that hole is a plot. And banned from life. Yeah, that one girl, like she's always on stream. She's my loyal fan base, if you can call her that. And she said she'd be on, and I haven't heard back from her. So maybe she fell asleep. She's a tired baby. I know you want to go to bed because you're an old man. I hope people like the sound of me breathing because that's all this is going to be. Explain the nuance of subtle jokes. You see, in the part where Bart Simpson talks about eating his shorts, he is actually referencing the communist regime of the 1980s, who were so hungry that they sometimes had to eat clothing in order to survive. Bart Simpson's shirt is red, and he is rebellious, representing the communist overthrowing the bourgeois capitalist of the 1990s. Oh, phone just went off. Okay, it is. It is that girl. I was worried. I was like, oh no, someone's gonna know I'm a pervert, but she already knows that. So hello, Shelby. It looks like she's on. Yeah. I don't know. She's not talking though. She's very quiet. Yeah. I don't know. I have that effect on Shelby's, I guess. But speaking of which, I heard you got rid of her. I bet you don't really miss her. Shelby, the dog. Amanda was missing her, which kind of surprised me. But yeah, I mean, it's rough with little kids, but even like Josh and Sarah were having some drama with Gimli upstairs. Yes, I guess this is how you chat on YouTube, Shelby. Um, but yeah, I guess Gimli bit Porter, and Gimli's so chill, so they were worried that maybe he was finally reaching his limit. But they sent him downstairs with me, and then like not even like an hour later, he was whining to go back upstairs. So it wasn't like no, he did not bite Porter, you idiot. He bit Everett. Did I say Porter originally? I probably said Porter. Too many names. Yeah, he bit Porter. Surprised you didn't know that. It was Shelby was innocent all along. I think I've told you this, Shelby, but my brother-in-law used to have a dog that shared your name, and that dog just she was crazy about me for some reason. Like, and she was loud about it. I would like enter their house, and that dog would scream for like 5-10 minutes, just because she was so excited. But she gone now. They gave her away. She's biting their little one, unfortunately. I thought I might have. I don't know. I can't even remember. I can't keep track of my own ramblings. I'm surprised anybody does. Uh, Thank you for coming on the stream, Shelby. I appreciate your support. Okay, thanks, Kagan. You're dead to me. I had sent Jason a message because he said he was online, but naturally I never heard back from him, and now he's away from keyboard. So go be dead somewhere else. Good night. But, excuse me. I'm just gonna start reading. If you like if you want to say anything, just do, I guess. Before I do though, it's so distracting. I don't know if you get it on yours, but like on this channel, one of the recommended videos for the stream, like on the sidebar, is 28 simple hacks that will change your life. And the thumbnail says wear wet socks to bed, and it shows somebody putting on some wet vomit green socks. And it's so distracting to me. Why would you ever do that? That's disgusting. That's like, I don't know. Have you seen those memes where like people will post terrible pictures of like nasty food? Like somebody will put like peanut butter on pizza and it'll be like a really low quality image and it'll say like cursed image. That's kind of what that's like. A YouTube thumbnail telling me to wear wet socks to bed. Awful. Oh, yeah, I maybe I should explain that. I have Steam chat open and my brother-in-law uh was the only person online that I wanted to ask. So I was like, "Hey, you want to just hop on stream and tell me if I'm screwing things up?" And then he went to bed because he's a boring old man. But that's where that was coming from. I promise I was not just talking to myself. I mean, I kind of am, but you know, not really. Oh, well, whatever. I'm just gonna start reading. Um, if you have anything to say, or even if you want to leave, feel free to do that. I won't stop you. Somebody posted this joke on Twitter. It's one of my favorites. I don't like puns usually, but this guy, he was like, if you're asking me to choose between our relationship and my obsession with pointing out doors to people, well, there's the door. I always like that one. Anyways, okay. uh, the Frog Prince. Long ago, when wishes often came true, there lived a king whose daughters were all handsome, but the youngest was so beautiful that the sun himself, who had seen everything, was bemused every time he shone over her because of her beauty. Near the royal castle there was a great dark wood, and in the wood under an old linden tree was a well, and when the day was hot the king's daughters used to go forth into the wood and sit by the brink of the cool well. And if time seemed long, she would take out a golden ball and throw it up and catch it again, and this was her favorite pastime, because apparently she's a dog. Now it happened one day that the golden ball, instead of falling back into the maiden's little hand, which had often set aloft, dropped to the ground near the edge of the well and rolled in. The king's daughter followed it with her eyes as it sank, but the well was deep, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Then she began to weep, and she wept and wept as if she could never be comforted. And in the midst of her weeping she heard a voice saying to her, "What ails you, king's daughter? Your tears would melt a heart of stone." And when she looked to see where the voice came from, there was nothing but a frog stretching his thick, ugly head out of the water. "Oh, is it you, old waddler?" she said. "I weep because of my golden ball, which has fallen down the well." "Never mind, do not weep," answered the frog. "I can help you. But what will you give me if I fetch up the ball again?" "Whatever you... Again? Has this happened before? You need to... Never mind. These people don't know how to write a story. "Whatever you like, dear frog," said she. "Any of my Whoa. Okay. I don't like where this is going. Any of my clothes. Why is that the first thing you suggest? My pearls and jewelry, or even the golden crown that I wear." "Your clothes, your pearls, your jewels, your golden crown are not for me," answered the frog. "But if you would love me, and have me for your companion and playfellow, and let me sit by you at the table, and eat from your plate, and drink from your cup, and sleep in your little bed, if you would promise all this, then would I dive below the water and fetch you your golden ball again." "Oh yes," she answered, "I will promise it all, whatever you want, if you will only get me my ball again." But she thought to herself, "What nonsense he talks! As if he could do anything but sit in the water and croak with other frogs, or could possibly be anyone's companions." Yeah, girls say that about me too. But the frog, as soon as he heard her promise, drew his head under the water and sank down out of sight. But after a while he came to the surface again with the ball in his mouth, and then he threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was overjoyed to see her pretty plaything again, and she caught it up and ran off with it. "Stop, stop!" cried the frog. "Take me up with you. I cannot run as fast as you." But it was of no use, for croak, croak after her as he might, she would not listen to him, but made haste home, and very soon forgot all about the poor frog, who had to betake himself to his well again. The next day, when the king's daughter was sitting at table with the king and all his court, and eating from her golden plate, there came something pitter-patter up the marble stairs, and then there came a knocking at the door, and a voice crying, "Youngest king's daughter, let me in!" And she got up and ran to see who it could be, but when she opened the door, there was the frog sitting outside. Then she shut the door hastily and went back to her seat, feeling very uneasy. The king noticed how quickly her heart was beating, and said, "My child, what are you afraid of? If there a giant standing at the door ready to carry... Oh, is there a giant standing at the door ready to carry you away?" "Oh no," answered she, "no giant, but a horrid frog." "And what does the frog want?" asked the king. "Oh, dear father," answered she, "when I was sitting by the well yesterday, and playing with my golden ball, it fell into the water, and while I was crying for the loss of it, the frog came and got it again for me, on condition that I would let him be my companion. But I never thought he could leave the water and come after me. But now there he is outside the door, and he wants to come into me." And then they all heard him knocking the second time and crying, "Youngest king's daughter, open to me." No, sorry, that's the frog, not the king. "Youngest king's daughter, open it to me. By the well water what you promised me. Youngest king's daughter, now open to me." "That which thou hast promised must thou perform," said the king. "So go now, and let him in." So she went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in, following at her heels till she reached her chair. Then he stopped and cried, "Lift me up to sit beside you." But she delayed doing so until the king ordered her. When once the king was on the When once the frog was on the chair, he wanted to get on the table, and there he sat and said, "Now push your golden plate in a little nearer, so that we may eat together." And so she did, but everybody might see how unwilling she was. And the frog feasted heartily, and every morsel seemed to stick in her throat. "I have had enough now," said the frog at last, "and as I am tired, you must carry me to your room, and make ready your silken bed, and we will lie down and go to sleep." Then the king's daughter began to weep, and was afraid of the cold frog, that nothing would satisfy him, but he must sleep in her pretty clean bed. Now the king grew angry with her, saying, "That which thou hast promised in thy time and necessity, must thou now perform? She picked up the frog and with her finger and thumb carried him upstairs and put him in a corner. And when she had lain down to sleep, he came up creeping, saying, I am tired and want to sleep as much as you. Take me up, or I will tell your father. Then she felt beside herself with rage, and picking him up, she threw him with all her strength against the wall, crying, Now will you be quiet, you horrid frog! But as he fell, he ceased to be a frog, and became all at once a prince with beautiful, kind eyes. And it came to pass that, with her father's consent, they became bride and bridegroom. And he told her how a wicked witch had bound him by her spells, and how no one but she alone could have released him, by throwing him against the wall, and that they would go together into his father's kingdom. And there came to the door a carriage drawn by 8 white horses, and with white plumes on their heads, and golden harnesses. Behind the carriage standing faithful Henry, the servant of the young prince. Now faithful Henry had suffered such care and pain when his master had turned into a frog, that he had been obliged to wear 3 iron bands over his heart to keep it from breaking. With what? How does that even happen? Like, did he just rip open his chest and put some? That's freaking cool. As deep as lore on here, as deep as the well. When the carriage started to take the prince to his kingdom, and faithful Henry had helped them both in, he got up behind and was full of joy at his master's deliverance. And when they had gone a part of the way, the prince heard a sound at the back of the carriage, as if something had broken, and he turned round and cried, Henry, the wheel must be breaking. But Henry answered, The wheel does not break, 'tis the band round my heart, that, to lessen its ache, when I grieved for your sake, I bound round my heart. And again, and yet once again, there came the same sound, and the prince thought it must be the wheel breaking, but it was the breaking of the other bands from faithful Henry's heart, because he was so relieved and happy. What? Story? It's such a simple story, but it goes all over the place. Like, what? Like, what are we supposed to... Okay, I get, like, in the... Maybe not the original, but usually what people say is, like, she kisses the frog and he turns into a prince. Right? That's how it goes? And so it's like, oh, true love breaks the evil witch's spell, which they totally stole from Shrek, but... So... Instead of that, she just throws him against the wall, and that turns him into a prince. So it's like, if you slam a guy against the wall, he's going to turn into a better person. And also, that gay guy that's been following him around for 3 years and threw some iron bands on his heart, he's just, those are going to break. That's the moral of the story, kids. How could such a simple little story be so weird? Whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's just a version. The thing about like Grimm fairy tales is that like there's 100 different versions and different translations and transcriptions. You get like different versions based on the region. Because it was all like I mean it was all oral tales, and the Brothers Grimm just compiled them. But here's one I don't think I've ever read called The Skillful Huntsman. There once was a young fellow who had learned the trade of locksmith, and told his father he would now go out into the world and seek his fortune. Very well, said the father, I am quite content with that, and gave him some money for his journey. So he travelled about and looked for work. After a time, he resolved not to follow the trade of locksmith any more, for he no longer liked it, but he took a fancy to hunting. And there he met, Oh, then there met him in his rambles a huntsman dressed in green, who asked whence he came and whither he was going. The youth said he was a locksmith's apprentice, but that the trade no longer pleased him, and he had a liking for huntsmanship. Would he teach it to him? Oh yes, said the huntsman, if thou wilt go with me. The young fellow went with him, bound himself to him for some years, and learnt the art of hunting. After this he wished to try his luck elsewhere, and the huntsman gave him nothing in the way of payment but an air gun, whatever, which had, however, this property. Oh, got a message from Jason. An hour later. Oh, Jason. What are we going to do about you? Anyways, where was I? After this, he wished to try his luck elsewhere, and the huntsman gave him nothing in the way of payment but an air gun, which had, however, this property, that it hit its mark without fail whenever he shot with it. Then he set out and found himself in a very large forest, which he could not get to the end of in one day. When evening came, he seated himself in a high tree in order to escape from the wild beasts. Towards midnight, it seemed to him as if a tiny little light glimmered in the distance. He looked down through the branches towards it, and kept well in his mind where it was. But in the first place, he took off his hat and threw it down in the direction of the light, so that he might go to the hat as a mark when he had descended. Then he got down and went to his hat, put it on again, and went straight forwards. The farther he went, the larger the light grew, and when he got close to it, he saw that it was an enormous fire, that there were 3 giants sitting by it, who had an ox on the spit, and were roasting it. Presently one of them said, I must taste if the meat will soon be fit to eat, and pulled a piece off, and was about to put it in his mouth when the huntsman shot it out of his hand. Well, really, the giant said, if the wind has not blown the bit out of my hand, and helped himself to another. But when he was just about to bite into it, the huntsman again shot it away from him. This guy's a dick. On this the giant gave the one who was sitting next to him a box on the ear, and cried angrily, Why art thou snatching my piece away from me? I have not snatched it away, said the other. A sharpshooter must have shot it away from thee. The giant took another piece, but could not, however, keep it in his hand, for the huntsman shot it out. Then the giant said, That must be a good shot to shoot the bit out of one's very mouth. Did he? Whatever. Such a one would be useful to us. And he cried aloud, Come here, thou sharpshooter. Seat thyself at the fire beside us, and eat thy fill. We will not hurt thee, but if thou wilt not come, and we have to bring thee by force, thou art a lost man. At this invitation the youth went up to them, and told them he was the skilled huntsman, that whatever he aimed at with his gun he was certain to hit. And they said if he would go with them, he would be well treated, and they told him that outside the forest there was a great lake, behind which stood a tower, and in the tower was imprisoned a lovely princess, whom they wished very much to carry off. Yes, said he, I will soon get her for you. Then they added, But there is something else. There is a tiny little dog, which begins to bark directly anyone who goes near. And as soon as it barks, every one in the royal palace wakens up, and for this reason we cannot get there. Canst thou undertake to shoot it dead? Yes, said he. That will be a little bit of fun for... Wow, what a dick. After this, he got into a boat, and rowed over the lake, and as soon as he landed, the little dog came running out, and was about to bark, but the huntsman took his air gun and shot it dead. Cold cocked that mother effer. When the giants saw that, they rejoiced, and thought they already had the king's daughter safe. But the huntsman wished first to see how matters stood, and told them that they must stay outside until he called them. Then he went into the castle, and all was perfectly quiet within. Everyone was asleep. When he opened the door of the first room, a sword was hanging on the wall, which was made of pure silver, and there was a golden star on it, and the name of the king, and on a table near it lay a sealed letter which he broken up, and inside it was written that whosoever had the sword could kill everything which opposed... Jeez Louise, what kind of story is this? So he took the So he took the sword from the wall, hung it at his side, and went outwards. Then he entered the room where the king's daughter was lying sleeping, and she was so beautiful that he stood still and, holding his breath, looked at her. He thought to himself, how can I give an innocent maiden into the power of the wild giants who have evil in their minds? He looked about further, and under the bed stood a pile of slippers, and on the right was her father's name with a star, and on the left her own name with a star. She wore also a great neckerchief of silk embroidered with gold, and on the right side was her father's name, and on the left her own. Jeez Louise, all in golden letters. Then the huntsman took a pair of scissors and cut the right corner off, and put it in his knapsack. Then he also took the right slipper with the king's name, and thrust that in. The maiden still lay sleeping, and was quite sewn into her nightdress. And he cut a morsel from this also, and thrust it in with the rest. But he did it all without touching her. Then he went forth and left her lying asleep undisturbed. Oh, thank goodness. I really wasn't even sure. And when he came to the gate again, the giants were still standing outside waiting for him, expecting that he was bringing the princess. But he cried to them that they were to come in, for the maiden was already in their power, that he could not open the gate to them, but there was a hole through which they must creep. And the first approached, and the huntsman wound the giant's hair around his hand, pulled the head in, and cut it off at one stroke with his sword, then drew the rest of him in. He called to the second, and cut his head off likewise, and then he killed the third also. And he was well pleased that he had freed the beautiful maiden from her enemies. And he cut out their tongues and put. Why did he do that? Whatever. Then thought he, I will go home to my father and let him see what I have already done, and afterwards I will travel about the world. The luck which God is pleased to grant me will easily find me. When the king in the castle awoke, he saw the three giants lying there dead. So he went into the sleeping room of his daughter, awoke her, and asked who could have killed the giants. Then said she, Dear father, I know not. I have been asleep, like I tend to do every stupid night. I don't know why she's angry about that, but she is. But when she arose and would have put on her slippers, the right one was gone. The one with her father. Why did you put your father's name on your slippers? That's really weird. And when she looked at her neckerchief, it was cut. On the right corner was missing. And when she looked at her nightdress, a piece of it was cut out. The king summoned his whole court together, soldiers and everyone else who was there, and asked who had set his daughter at liberty and killed the giants. Now it happened that he had a captain, who was one-eyed and a hideous man. He said that he had done it. Then the old king said that as he had accomplished this, he should marry his daughter. But the maiden said, Rather than marry him, dear father, I will go away into the world as far as my legs can carry me. And she is the most sensible person in this thing. I just need an excuse to get away for a while. I don't know why you put your name on my slippers, father. The king said that if she would not marry him, she would take off her royal garments and wear peasant's clothing, and go forth, and that she should go to a potter and begin a trade in earthen vessels. So she put off her royal apparel, and went to a potter and borrowed crockery enough for a stall. And she promised him also that if she had sold it by the evening, she would pay for it. Then the king said she was to seat herself in a corner with it and sell it. And he arranged with some peasants to drive over it with their carts, so that everything should be broken into 1,000 pieces. When therefore the king's daughter had placed her stall in the street, by came the cart, and broke all she had into tiny fragments. She began to weep, and said, Alas, how shall I ever pay for the pots now? His dad is like something else, man. The king had, however, wished by this to force her to marry the captain, but instead of that, she went again to the potter and asked him if he would lend to her once more. He said no, she must first pay for the things she already had taken. Then she went to her father, and cried and lamented, and said she would go forth into the world. Then said he, I will have a little hut built for thee in the forest outside, and in it thou shalt stay all thy life long, and cook for everyone, but thou shalt take no money for it. When the hut was up, a sign was hung on the door where was written, Today given, tomorrow sold. Okay. Surprised he didn't put his name on it. There she remained a long time, and it was rumored about the world that a maiden was there who cooked without asking for payment, and that this set forth on a sign outside her door. The huntsman heard it likewise, and thought to himself, That would suit thee. Thou art poor and hast no money. So he took his airgun and his knapsack, wherein all the things which he had formerly carried away with him from the castle as tokens of his truthfulness were still lying, and went into the forest, and found the hut with the sign, saying, Today given, tomorrow sold. He had put on the sword which he had cut off the heads of the three giants, and thus entered the hut, and ordered something to eat to be given to him. He was charmed with the beautiful maiden, who was indeed as lovely as any picture. She asked him whence he came and whither he was going, and he said, I am roaming about the world. Then she asked him where he had got the sword, for that truly her father's name was on it. It's on everything. He asked her if she were the king's daughter. Yes, she said. With this sword, said he, did I cut off the heads of those three giants. And he took out their tongues from his knapsack in proof. I kept these as a souvenir. That was several weeks ago, though. Then he also showed her the slipper and the corner of her neckerchief, and the bit of her nightdress. Whereupon she was overjoyed. I was looking for that slipper, and said that he was the one who had delivered her. More like delivered it to her. They went together to the old king and fetched him to the hut. And she led him into her room and told him that the huntsman was the man who had really set her free from the giants. And when the aged king saw all the proofs of this, he could no longer doubt, and said that he was very glad he knew how everything had happened, and that the huntsman should have her to wife, on which the maiden was glad at heart. Then she dressed the huntsman as if he were a foreign lord, and the king ordered a feast to be prepared. When they went to table, the captain sat on the left side of the king's daughter, but the huntsman was on the right, and the captain thought he was a foreign lord who had come to visit. When they had eaten and drunk, the old king said to the captain that he would set before him something which he must guess. Supposing anyone said that he had killed the three giants, and he were asked where the giants' tongues were, and he were forced to go and look, and there were none in their heads, how could that happen? The captain said. Then they cannot have had any. Jesus wording. Not so, said the king. Every animal has a tongue. Then he likewise asked what any one would deserve who made such an answer. The captain replied, He ought to be torn in pieces. Then the king said he had pronounced his own sentence, and the captain was put in prison, and then torn in 4 pieces. But the king's daughter was married to the huntsman. After this he brought his father and mother, and they lived with their son in happiness. And after the death of the old king, he received his kingdom. What? Is there a moral to this story? Like, your stupid friends, if they tell you to go break into a place and kill a lady's dog, yeah, definitely do that, because you'll probably be made a king. Freaking piece. What was the point of that story? Why? Jeez. Well, whatever. I guess I'll just move on right on to the next story, which is a little thing called The Princess in Disguise, which is another story I've never heard before. But I'm sure if it's anything like the others, it promotes degeneracy and breaking and entering and ruining a girl's clothes while she's sleeping. You know, because that really gets the ladies going. That's what they love. Oh, you're the guy that stole that piece of my dress. I've been dreaming about you. If that were true, I would have been married a long time ago. Anyway, The Princess in Disguise. A king once had a wife with golden hair who was so beautiful that none on earth could be found equal to her. It happened that she fell ill, and as soon as she knew she must die, she sent for the king and said to him, After my death, I know you will marry another wife, but you must promise me that, however beautiful she may be, if she is not as beautiful as I am and has not golden hair like mine, you shall not marry her. Okay, first paragraph, and she's already saying, if you're gonna marry again, she better look exactly like me, mother effer. That's really something. The king had no sooner given his promise than she closed her eyes and died. Oh, that was convenient. For a long time he refused to be comforted, and though it was impossible, and though it and thought it was impossible he could ever take another wife. At length his counselors came to him and said, "A king should not remain unmarried. We ought to have a queen." So he at last consented, and then messengers were sent far and wide to find a bride whose beauty should equal that of the dead queen. But none was to be found in the whole world, for even when equally beautiful, they had not golden hair. So the messengers returned without obtaining what they sought. Now the king had a daughter who was oh no, oh no. The king had a daughter who was quite as beautiful as her dead mother, and had also golden hair. She had all this woman grown up, and very soon the king noticed how exactly she resembled her dead mother. So he sent for his counselors and said to them, "Here we go. I will marry my daughter. She is the image of my dead wife, and no other bride can be found to enable me to keep my promise to her." Okay, when the counselors heard this, they were dreadfully shocked. So we've at least got that going for us, and said, "It is forbidden for a father to marry his daughter. Nothing but evil could spring from such a sin, and the kingdom will be ruined." When the king's daughter heard of her father's proposition, surprisingly, she was greatly alarmed, the more so as she saw how resolved he was to carry out his intentions. Oh, I feel dirty. I thought that maybe if I was reading fairy tales, that would be moderately better than reading like terrible fan fiction on the internet. I don't think that's actually true. I think that these people are basically the terrible perverted fan fiction of their day. Anyways, so she saw how I can't even say that. She saw how resolved he was to carry out his intention. She hoped, however, to be able to save him and herself from such ruin and disgrace. So she said to him, "Before I consent to your wish, I shall require three things: a dress as golden as the sun, another as silvery as the moon, and a third as glittering as the stars. And besides this, I shall require a mantle made of 1,000 skins of rough fur sewn together, and every animal of the kingdom must give a piece of his skin toward it." Ah, she thought, I have asked for impossibilities, and I hope I shall be able to make my father give up his wicked intentions. The king, however, was not to be diverted from his purpose. Jeez. All the most skilful young women in the kingdom were employed to weave the three dresses, one to be as golden as the sun, another as silvery as the moon, and the third as glittering as the stars. He sent hunters from the forest to kill the wild animals and bring home their skin, of which the mantle was to be made. And when at last all was finished, he brought them and laid them before her, and said, "Tomorrow our marriage shall take place." Then the king's daughter saw that there was no hope of changing her father's heart, so she determined to run away from the castle. In the night, when everyone slept, she rose and took from her jewel case a gold ring, a gold spinning wheel, and a golden hook. The three dresses of the sun, moon, and stars she folded in so small a parcel that they were placed in a walnut shell. Then she put on the fur mantle, stained her face and hands black with walnut juice, and committed herself to the care of heaven. She left her home. Rather. After traveling the whole night, she came at last to a large forest, and feeling very tired, she crept into a hollow tree and went to sleep. The sun rose, but still she slept on and did not wake till nearly noon. Hashtag relatable. It happened on this very day that the king to whom the wood belonged was hunting in the forest, and when his hounds came to the tree they sniffed about and ran around the tree barking loudly. The king called to his hunters, "Just go and see what animal the dogs are barking at." They obeyed, and quickly returning told the king that in the hollow tree was a most beautiful creature, such as they had never seen before, that the skin was covered with 1,000 different sorts of fur, and that it was fast asleep. "Then," said the king, "go and see if you can capture it alive." then bind it on the wagon and bring it home. Sorry, hold on, I gotta adjust. Ugh. Ugh. Okay, and we're back. When the hunters were binding the maiden, she awoke, full of terror, and cried out to them, "I am only a poor child, forsaken by my father and mother. Take pity on me, and take me with you." "Well," they replied, "you may be useful to the cook, little Rough-Skin. Come with us, and you can at least sweep up the ashes." So they seated her on the wagon, and took her home to the king's castle. They showed her a little stable under the steps, where no daylight ever came, and said, "Rough-Skin, here you can live and sleep." So the king's daughter was sent into the kitchen to fetch the wood, and draw the water, and stir the fire, and pluck the fowls, look after the vegetables, sweep the ashes, and do all the hard work. Poor Rough-Skin, as they called her, lived for a long time most miserably, and the beautiful king's daughter knew not when it would end, or how. It happened, however, after a time, that a festival was to take place in the castle. So she said to the cook, "May I go out for a little while to see the company arrive? I will stand outside the door." "Yes, you may," he replied, "but in half an hour I shall want you to sweep up the ashes and put the kitchen in order." So she took her little oil lamp, went into the stable, threw off the fur coat, washed the nut stains from her face and hands, so that her full beauty appeared before the day. After this she opened the nutshell and took out the dresses that were golden as the sun, and put it on. And as soon as she was quite dressed, she went out and presented herself at the entrance of the castle as a visitor. No one recognized her as Rough-Skin. They thought she was a king's daughter, and sent and told the king of her arrival. He went to receive her, offered her his hand, and while they danced together he thought in his heart, "My eyes have never seen any maiden so beautiful as this." As soon as the dance was over, she bowed to the king, and before he could look round she had vanished. No one knew where. The sentinel to the castle gate was called and questioned, but he had not seen anyone pass. But she had run to her stable, quickly removed her dress, stained her face and hands, put on her fur coat, and was again Rough-Skin. When she entered the kitchen and began to do her work and sweep up the ashes, the cook said, "Leave that alone till tomorrow. I want you to cook some soup for the king. I will also taste a little when it is ready. But do not let one of your hairs fall in, or you will get nothing to eat in the future from me." Then the cook went out, and Rough-Skin made the king's soup as nicely as she could, and cut bread for it. And when it was ready, she fetched from her little stable her golden ring and laid it in the dish in which the soup was prepared. After the king had left the ballroom, he called for the soup, and while eating it thought he had never tasted better soup in his life. But when the dish was nearly empty, he saw to his surprise a golden ring lying at the bottom, and could not imagine how it came there. Then he ordered the cook to come in, and he was in a terrible fright when he heard the order. "You must certainly have let a hair fall into the soup. If you have, I shall thrash you," he said. As soon as he appeared, the king said, "Who cooked this soup?" "I cooked it." "That is not so. This soup is made quite differently, and tastes much better than the slop you make." And the cook was obliged to confess that Rough-Skin had made the soup. "Go and send her to me." And as soon as she appeared, the king said to her, "Who art thou, maiden?" She replied, "I am a poor child, without father or mother." Mudder. "I am a poor child, without father or mother." He asked again, "Why are you in my castle?" "Because I am trying to earn my bread by helping the cook." "How came this ring in my soup?" he said. "I know nothing about the ring," she replied. When the king found he could learn nothing from Rough-Skin, he sent her away. A little time after this there was another festival, and Rough-Skin again had permission from the cook to go and see the visitors. "But," he added, "come back in half an hour and cook for the king the soup that he is so fond of." She promised to return, and ran off quickly into her little stable, washed off the stains, and took out of the nutshell her dress, silvery as the moon, and put it on. Then she appeared at the castle like a king's daughter, and the king came to receive her with great pleasure. He was so glad to see her again, and while the dancing continued, the king kept her as his partner. When the ball ended, she disappeared so quickly that the king could not imagine what had become of her. But she had rushed down to her stable, made herself again the rough little creature that was called Rough Skin, and went into the kitchen to cook the soup. And while the cook was upstairs, she fetched the golden spinning wheel and dropped it into the soup as soon as it was ready. I thought a spinning wheel was like, maybe I'm thinking of a spindle. What is a spinning wheel then? Because I thought that was like, yeah, like Googling it, a spinning wheel is like a thing you sit at. Yeah, it's like the size of your torso. What? Excuse me, waiter? Yeah, there's a spindle in my soup. Well, obviously that was the weird girl that has nut stains on her face. Uh, where was I? Right. So she dropped the golden spinning wheel and dropped it into the soup as soon as it was ready. King again ate it with great relish. It was as good as before, and when he sent for the cook and asked who made it, he was obliged to own that it was Roughskin. You think he'd know better by now. She was also ordered to appear before the king, but before he could get anything out of her, except that she was a poor child and knew nothing of the golden spinning wheel. At the king's third festival everything happened as before, but the cook said, "I will let you go and see the dancing room this time, Roughskin, but I believe you are a witch, for although the soup is good and the king says it is better than I can make it, there is always something dropped into it which I cannot understand." Yeah, I don't understand it either. How do you put a freaking spinning wheel into a bowl of soup? Then again, I'm not German, so I don't know. Roughskin did not stop to listen. She quickly ran to her little stable, washed off the nut stains, and this time dressed herself in the dress that glittered like the stars. When the king came as before to receive her in the hall, he thought he had never seen such a beautiful woman in his life. While they were dancing, he contrived, without being noticed by the maiden, to slip a golden ring on her finger. Well, dang, dude's got some skills. And he had given orders that the dancing should continue longer than usual. When it ended, he wanted to hold her hand still, but she pulled away, and sprang so quickly among the people that she vanished from his eyes. She ran out of breath to her stable under the steps, for she knew that she had remained longer away than half an hour, and there was not time enough to take off her dress. So she threw on her fur cloak over it, and in her haste she did not make her face black enough. You're not a black lady. Nor hide her golden hair properly. Her hands also remained white. However, when she entered the kitchen, the cook was still away, so she prepared the king's soup and dropped into it the golden hook. The king, being an idiot, drank the golden hook and died. The end. The king, when he found another trinket in his soup, sent immediately for Roughskin, and as he entered the room he saw the ring on her white finger which she had placed there. Instantly he seized her hand and held her fast, but in her struggles to get her free, the fur mantle opened and the glittering dress was plainly seen. The king caught the mantle and tore it off, and as he did so her golden hair fell over her shoulders, and she stood before him in her full splendor, and felt that she could no longer conceal who she was. Then she wiped the soot and stains from her face, and was beautiful to the eyes of the king as any woman upon earth. "Then you shall be my dear bride," said the king, "and we will never be parted again, although I know not who you are." And then she told him her past history, and all that had happened to her, and he found that she, as he thought, was a king's daughter. Soon after the marriage was celebrated, and they lived happily till their death, and then they suffered in hell for all eternity for being pagans. Wasn't that a great story, children? Yeah, I'm kind of a pervert. So I've actually been streaming like an hour and a half now. Um, I'm not tired yet. I don't. Are you like gonna fall asleep on me, Shelby? Because it's cool if you do. I just want to know. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. I I can keep reading. I want to take a quick break though, because I've been talking a lot and I need to stretch my legs. So I'm gonna mess around with some of these settings real quick. I wonder. I started. I started adding an audio thing that's supposed to make this sound a little better. Now I can't find it. Where did it go? But no, not media source. I think it's just you and I. Yeah, two people. Because I have a window open, so it counts me as a viewer. Um, yeah, what the heck? I know I had. What? What? The only problem with like I have YouTube allows you to pop out the chat window, so you don't have to open a big old window to see the chat, but there's no notification, so I don't I don't see you posting anything until like I check on it manually, which is kind of a pain. Whoops. Yeah, what the heck? That is so weird. I had just now. Well, whatever. I'm gonna take a quick break. I need to stretch my legs, so I will be right back. Don't you go dying on me. Hello, Kimmery. Thank you for coming on the stream. All right. A beautiful story about a very young girl getting sexually propositioned by her father and then running away and concealing herself with nut stains. I honestly like I remember there being at least one of these fairy tales, maybe not in this book, but I remember there being at least one fairy tale where it was just like that, where the princess ends up marrying her father. I I remember something like that, but I don't know if it's in this book. No, not that one. No, not that one either. Ah. Yeah. I almost like I almost want to like try and just record just, some actual bedtime stories and post them on YouTube. But this is the only book I have that's like actual bedtime stories. And it's not really the kind of thing I would want my kids to be reading. Maybe that's just me. Maybe. Because yeah, as it turns out, fairy tales are a little they're a little jacked up. Uh, I'm gonna try and edit the name of the stream real quick. We'll see if it actually works. Creator Academy. No, not that one. I don't know. Maybe I'll just figure this out another time. Oh wait, nope. Nope, I'm gonna figure it out right now and make people wait for me. Because that's the kind of guy I am. I hope you guys like the sound of me smacking my lips repeatedly. That actually sounded creepier than I intended. I don't know how that's possible. Yes, okay. Okay, I don't know if this will update immediately, but I've changed the format so it's like, you know, bedtime stories. I hope no little children come on here thinking that they're going to get some very nice stories and instead they're going to get this. There's one in here called the Glass Coffin, which sounds metal AF. So we're gonna find out. And knowing these people, this is probably gonna be the most mundane story in the whole book. But I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna find out who did that. I'm sure you already know this, Kimmery, but it was Shelby who drew the rose. She's very good. Thank you, Shelby. You are the real MVP. Anyways, the Glass Coffin. Let no one ever say that a poor tailor cannot do great things and win high honors. All that is needed is that he should go to the right smithy, and what is of most consequence, that he should have good luck. A civil, adroit tailor's apprentice once went out traveling, and came into a great forest, and, as he did not know the way, he lost himself. Night fell, and nothing was left for him to do but to seek a bed in the painful solitude. Dang, who wrote this? This is like an actual author. Anyways, he might certainly have found a good bed on the soft moss, but the fear of wild beasts let him have no rest there, and at last he was forced to make up his mind to spend the night in a tree. He sought out a high oak, climbed up to the top of it, and thanked God that he had his goose with. Oh, yeah, don't leave home without your goose, for otherwise the wind which blew over the top of the tree would have carried him away. And after he had spent some hours in the darkness, not without fear and trembling, he saw at a very short distance the glimmer of a light, and as he thought that a human habitation might be there, where he would be better off than on the branches of a tree, he got carefully down and went toward the light. It guided him to a small hut that was woven together of reeds and rushes. He knocked boldly. The door opened, and by the light which came forth he saw a little hoary old man who wore a coat made of bits of colored stuff. Yeah, it's not cloth, just colored stuff sewn together. Who are you, and what do you want? Asked the man in a grumbling voice. I am a poor tailor, he answered, whom night has surprised here in the wilderness, and I earnestly beg you to take me into your hut until morning. Go your way, replied the old man. I will have nothing to do with rascals. Seek shelter elsewhere. After these words he was about to slip into his hut again, but the tailor held him so tightly by the corner of his coat and pleaded so piteously that the old man, who was not so ill-natured as he wished to appear, was at last softened, and took him into the hut with him, where he gave him something to eat, and then pointed out to him a very good bed in a corner. The weary tailor needed no rocking. Sure hope not. But slept sweetly till morning. Even then he would not have thought of getting up, if he had not been aroused by a great noise. A violent sound of screaming and roaring forced its way through the thin walls of the hut. The tailor, full of unwonted courage, that's wonted, by the way, W-O-N-T, not W-A-N-T, although unwanted courage is whatever, jumped up, put his clothes on in a haste, and hurried out. Then close by the hut he saw a great black bull and a beautiful stag, which were just preparing for a violent struggle. They rushed at each other. They rushed at each other with such extreme rage that the ground shook and their trembling, and the air resonated with their cries. For a long time it was uncertain which of the two would gain the victory. At last the stag thrust his horns into his adversary's body, whereupon the bull fell to the earth with a terrific roar, and was thoroughly dispatched by a few strokes from the stag. The tailor, who had watched the fight with astonishment, was standing still there motionless, and when the stag in full career bounded up to him, and before he could escape, caught him up on his great horns. He had not much time to collect his thoughts, for it went in a swift race over stock and stone, mountain and valley, wood and meadow. He held with both hands to the top of the horns, and resigned himself to his fate. It seemed to him, however, just as if he were flying away. At length the stag stopped in front of a wall of rock and gently let the tailor down. The tailor, more dead than alive, required a longer time than that to come to himself. When he had in some degree recovered, the stag, which had remained standing by him, pushed its horns with such great force against the door which was in the rock, that it sprang open. Flames of fire shot forth, after which followed a great smoke, which hid the stag from his sight. The tailor did not know what to do, or whither to turn, in order to get out of this desert and back to human beings again. While he was standing there, thus undecided, a voice sounded out of the rock which cried to him, "Enter without fear, no evil shall befall thee." He certainly hesitated, but driven by a mysterious force, he obeyed the voice, and went through the iron door into a large spacious hall, whose ceiling, walls, and floors were made of shining, polished square stones, on each of which were cut letters which were unknown to him. He looked at everything full of admiration, and was on the point of going out again, when he once more heard the voice say, which said, no, 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 which said unto him, "Step on the stone which lies in the middle of the hall, and great good fortune awaits thee." His courage had already grown so great that he obeyed the order. The stone began to give way under his feet, and sank slowly down into the depths. When it was once more firm, and the tailor looked round, he found himself in a hall which in size resembled the former. Here, however, there was more to look at and to admire. Hollow places were cut in the walls, in which stood vases of transparent glass, which were filled with colored spirit or with bluish vapor. This is like an actual fantasy story, but this is in the same book as folk tales, which are just patched together by a bunch of homeless Germans. On the floor of the hall, two great glass chests stood opposite to each other, which at once excited his curiosity. When he went to one of them, he saw inside it a handsome structure like a castle, surrounded by farm buildings, stables, and barns, and a quantity of other good things. Everything was small, but exceedingly careful and delicately made, and seemed to be cut out by a dexterous hand with the greatest exactitude. He might not have turned away his eyes from the consideration of this rarity for some time, if the voice had not once more made itself heard. It ordered him to turn round and look at the glass chest which was standing opposite. How his admiration increased when he saw therein a maiden of the greatest beauty. She lay as if asleep, and was wrapped in her long fair hair as in a precious mantle. Her eyes were closely shut, but the brightness of her complexion and a ribbon which her breathing moved to and fro left no doubt that she was still alive. The tailor, looking at the beauty with beating heart, was looking at the beauty with beating heart, when she suddenly opened her eyes, and started up at the sight of him in joyful terror. "Just heaven!" cried she, "my deliverance is at hand! Quick, quick, help me out of my prison. If you push back the bolt of this glass coffin, then I shall be free." The tailor obeyed without delay. Then she immediately raised up the glass lid, and came out and hastened into the corner of the hall, where she covered herself with a large cloak. Then she seated herself on a stone, ordered the young man to come to her, and after she had imprinted a friendly kiss on his lips, she said, "My long desired deliverer, kind heaven has guided you to me, and put an end to my sorrows. On the self-same day when they end shall your happiness begin. You are the husband chosen for me by heaven, and you shall pass your life in unbroken joy, loved by me, and rich to overflowing in every earthly passion. Seat yourself, and listen to the story of my life. I am the daughter of a rich count. My parents died when I was still in my tender youth, and recommended me in their last will to my elder brother, by whom I was brought up. We loved each other so tenderly, and were so alike in our way of thinking and our inclinations, that we both embraced the resolution never to marry, but to stay together to the end of our lives. Oh, gee, they can't get away from the incest. In our house there was no lack of company. Neighbors and friends visited us often, and we showed the greatest hospitality to every one. So it came to pass one evening that a stranger came riding to our castle, and under pretext of not being able to get on to the next place, begged for shelter for the night. We granted his request with ready courtesy, and he entertained us in the most agreeable manner during supper by his conversation intermingled with stories. My brother liked the stranger so much that he begged him to spend a couple days with us, to which, after some hesitation, he consented. We did not rise from the table until late in the night. The stranger was shown to a room, and I hastened, as I was tired, to lay my limbs in my soft bed. Hardly had I slept for a short time, when the sound of faint and delightful music awoke me. As I could not conceive from whence it came, I wanted to summon my waiting maid, who slept in the next room, but to my astonishment I found that speech was taken away from me by an unknown force. I felt as if a mountain were weighing down upon my breast, and was unable to make the very slightest sound. In the meantime, by the light of my night lamp, I saw the stranger enter my room through two doors which were fast bolted. He came to me and said that by magic arts which were at his command, he had caused this lovely music to sound in order to awaken me, and that he now forced his way through all fastenings with the intention of offering me his hand and heart. My repugnance to his magic arts, however, was so great that I vouchsafed him no answer. He remained for a time standing without moving, apparently with the idea of waiting for a favorable decision, but as I continued to keep silence, he angrily declared he would revenge himself and find means to punish my pride, and left the room. I passed the night in the greatest disquietude, and I fell asleep only towards the morning. When I awoke, I hurried to my brother, but did not find him in his room, and the attendants told me he had ridden forth with the stranger to the chase by daybreak. I had once suspected nothing good. I dressed myself quickly, ordered my palfrey to be saddled, and accompanied only by one servant, rode full gallop to the forest. The servant fell with his horse, and could not follow me, for the horse had broken his foot. I pursued my way without halting, and in a few minutes I saw the stranger coming towards me with a beautiful stag, which he led by a cord. I asked him where he had left my brother, and how he had come by the stag, out of whose great eyes I saw tears flowing. Instead of answering me, he began to laugh loudly. I fell into a great rage at this, pulled out a pistol and discharged it at the monster, but the ball rebounded from his breast and went into my horse's head. I fell to the ground, and the stranger muttered some words which deprived me of consciousness. When I came to my senses again, I found myself in this underground cave in a glass coffin. The magician appeared once again, and said he had changed my brother into a stag. My castle, with all that belonged to it, diminished in size by his arts, he had shut up in the other glass chests, and my people, who were all turned into smoke, he had confined in glass bottles. He told me that if I would now comply with his wish, it was an easy thing for him to put everything back in its former state, as he had nothing to do but open the vessels, and everything would return once more to its natural form. I answered him as little as I had done the first time. He vanished and left me in my prison, in which a deep sleep came upon me. Among the visions which passed before my eyes, there was the most comforting in which a young man came and set me free, and when I opened my eyes today I saw you, and beheld my dream fulfilled. Help me to accomplish the other things which happened in these visions. The first is that we lift the glass chest in which the castle is enclosed on that broad stone. As soon as the stone was laden, it began to rise up on high, both the maiden and the young man, and mounted through the opening of the ceiling into the upper hall, from whence they then could easily reach into the open air. Here the maiden opened the lid, and it was marvelous to behold how the castle, the houses, and the farm buildings which were enclosed, stretched themselves out and grew to their natural size with the greatest rapidity. After this, the maiden and the tailor returned to the cave beneath the earth, and had the vessels which were filled with smoke carried up by the stone. The maiden had scarcely opened the bottles when the blue smoke rushed out, and changed itself into living men, in whom she recognized her servants and her people. Her joy was still more increased when her brother, whom had killed the magician in the form of a bull, came out of the forest towards them in his human form. And on the selfsame day the maiden, in accordance with her promise, gave her hand at the altar to the lucky tailor. See, that was an actual nice story. That was well written and interesting. That was good. That was very good. Good story. Good job, whoever wrote that. So the book I have, I don't even know if this, there's no barcode on it. I don't see an ISBN. It doesn't have an author. It just says Grimm Fairy Tales, Grimm, which is the Brothers Grimm. It does have an order for whoever printed it. Nelson Doubleday, Garden City, New York. Yeah, there's no ISBN, there's no forward, no afterword, no copyright information, no if you like this book, check out. Nothing. It's very archaic. Nelson Doubleday is who published it. I think I stole this from my family business because we had a library at our trailer park. I think that's where I got it because people would just donate books they didn't want. I think I just took this one because it's not like it was a library book either. It doesn't even have like library markings. We didn't, of course, in ours. It was just people would donate stupid books they didn't want to read. Usually Danielle Steele. Who's that lady that writes like 1,000 romance novels every year? It's like for real. But anyways, yeah. So that was actually kind of nice. I like it. I'm gonna mark it actually. Hold on a sec. Ah. Okay. I can do this. I can't come to a lot of meetings, but I guess I'll go in. What am I doing? I'm marking the thing. I'm marking the thing. I'm marking the thing. The book. Nothing else. Just the book. I want to mark that story because that one's actually really good. There were actually 4 people on this stream. I don't know who that 4th person was. They didn't comment. I assume they're offended by me rustling around my bags. But Girl Without Hands. I think I do have that one. Let me see here. I'm so sure that I've seen it before. I think I remember that one. I think I've read it before, but I'm pretty sure I saw it in here. If not, I'm just gonna look it up online because I remember liking that story. Oh, 4th person's back. Hello, 4th person, whoever you are. 4 skillful brothers. Oh, there's the 4 skillful brothers. But I think I've never read 4 skillful brothers. I don't know about that one. I want to see. I'm sure I have The Girl Without Hands. Page 188. That is oddly specific. If that ends up being the case. Nope, it wasn't. Page 188 is part of Sweetheart Roland, according to the table of contents. juniper tree, brother and sister, twin brothers, gold children, 3 black princesses. I'm gonna look that one up. Yeah, read it to me. Line by line in the chat. That'll work well. I'll react to it 30 seconds from now. No, I have it. Just let me find it. Okay, so this one's just from pit.edu. The Girl Without Hands. A miller fell slowly but surely into poverty, until finally he had nothing more than his mill and a large apple tree which stood behind it. One day he had gone into the forest to gather wood, where he was approached by an old man whom he had never seen before, and who said, "Why do you torment yourself with chopping wood? I will make you rich if you promise me that which is standing behind your mill." "What can that be but my apple tree?" thought the miller, and said yes, signing it over to the strange man. The latter, however, laughed mockingly and said, "I will come in 3 years and get what belongs to me," then went away. When he arrived home, his wife came to him and said, "Miller, tell me what is his name? That's convenient. Miller, tell me where did all this wealth come from that is suddenly in our house? All at once the chests and boxes are full, and no one brought it here, and I don't know where it came from." He answered, It comes from a strange man whom I met in the woods, who promised me great treasures if I would but sign over to him that which stands behind the mill. We can give up the large apple tree for all this." "Oh, husband," said the woman, terrified, "that was the devil. He didn't mean the apple tree, but our daughter, who was just standing behind the miller, sweeping the yard. Standing behind the mill, sweeping the yard." Well, the miller's daughter was a beautiful and pious girl. She lived the 3 years, worshipping God and without sin. When the time was up and the day came when the evil one was to get her, she washed herself clean and drew a circle around her with chalk. The devil appeared very early in the morning, but he could not approach her. He spoke angrily to the miller. "Keep water away from her, so she cannot wash herself any more. Otherwise I have no power over her." The miller was frightened and did what he was told. The next morning the devil returned, but she had wept into her hands, and they were entirely clean. Thus he still could not approach her, and he spoke angrily to the miller. "Chop off her hands, otherwise I cannot get to her." The miller was horrified and answered, "How can I chop off my own child's hands?" Then the evil one threatened him, saying, "If you do not do it, then you will be mine, and I will take you myself. And I will take you yourself. I don't know why it's yourself." This frightened the father, and he promised to obey him. Then he went to the girl and said, "My child, if I do not chop off both of your hands, then the devil will take me away, and in my fear I have promised him to do this. Help me in my need, and forgive me the evil which I am going to do to you." She answered, "Dear father, do with me what you will. I am your child." And with that she stretched forth both her hands, and let her father chop them off. The devil came a third time, but she had wept so long and so much onto the stumps that they were entirely clean. Oh, dang it, I lost my place. Then he had to give up, for he had lost all claim to her. The miller spoke to her. "I have gained great wealth through you. I shall take care of you in splendor as long as you live." But she answered, "I cannot remain here. I will go away. Compassionate people will give me as much as I need." Then she had her mutilated arms tied to her back, and at sunrise she set forth, walking the entire day until it was night. She came to a royal garden, and by the light of the moon she saw that inside there were trees full of beautiful fruit, but she could not get inside, for it was surrounded by water. Having walked the entire day without eating a bite, she was suffering from hunger and thought, "Oh, if only I were inside the garden, so I could eat some of those fruits. Otherwise I shall perish." Then she knelt down, and crying out to God the Lord, she prayed. Suddenly an angel appeared. He closed the head gate so that the moat dried up, and she could walk through. She entered the garden, and the angel went with her. She saw a fruit tree with beautiful pears, but they had all been counted. She stepped into the tree and ate from it with her mouth, enough to satisfy her hunger, but no more. The gardener saw, but because the angel was standing by her, he was afraid, and thought the girl was a spirit. He said nothing and did not dare to call out, nor to speak to the spirit. After she had eaten the pear, she was full, and she went and lay down in the brush. The king who owned this garden came the next morning. He counted the fruit and saw that one of the pears was missing. He asked the gardener what had happened. It was not lying under the tree, but had somehow disappeared. The gardener said, "Last night a spirit came here. It had no hands and ate one of the pears with its mouth." "But how else would it eat it, with its butthole?" Whatever. The king said, "How did the spirit get across the water? And where did it go after it had eaten the pear?" The gardener answered, "Someone dressed in snow white came from heaven and closed the head gate so the spirit could walk through the moat. Because it must have been an angel, I was afraid, and I asked no questions. I did not call out. After the spirit had eaten the pear, it went away again." The king had said, "If what you said is true, I will keep watch with you tonight." After it was dark, the king entered the garden, bringing a priest with him who was to talk to the spirit. All three sat down under the tree and kept watch. Oh, hold on. Okay, I thought I was going to burp. At midnight, the girl came creeping out of the brush, stepped up to the tree, and again ate off a pear with her mouth. An angel dressed in white was standing next to her. The priest walked up to them and said, "Have you come from God or from the world? Are you a spirit or a human?" She answered, "I am not a spirit, but a poor human who has been abandoned by everyone except God." The king answered, "Even if you have been abandoned by the whole world, I will not abandon you." He took her home. He took her home with him to his royal castle, and because she was so beautiful and pure, he loved her with all his heart, had silver hands made for her, and took her as a wife. After a year, the king had to go out into the battlefield, and he left the young queen in the care of his mother, saying, "If she has a child, support her and take good care of her, and immediately send me the news in a letter." She gave birth to a beautiful son. The old mother quickly wrote this in a letter, giving the joyful news to the king. Now on the way the messenger stopped at a brook to rest. Tired from his long journey, he fell asleep. Then the devil came to him. He still wanted to harm the pious queen, and he took the letter, putting in its place one that stated that the queen had brought a changeling into the world. When the king had read this letter, he was frightened and saddened, but nonetheless he wrote an answer that they should take good care of the queen until his return. The messenger returned with this letter, but he rested at the same place and again fell asleep. The devil came again and placed a different letter in his bag. The letter said that they should kill the queen with her child. The old mother was terribly frightened when she received the letter. She could not believe it, and wrote to the king again, but she got back the same answer, because each time the devil substituted a false letter. And the last letter even stated that they should keep the queen's tongue and eyes as proof. The old mother lamented that such innocent blood was to be shed, and in the night she had a doe killed, cut out its tongue and eyes, and had them put aside. Then she said to the queen, "I cannot have you killed as the king has ordered, but you can no longer stay here. Go out into the wide world with your child, and never come back." The old mother tied the queen's child onto her back, and the poor woman went away with weeping eyes. She came into a great, wild forest, where she got onto her knees and prayed to God. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to her and led her to a small house. On it was a small sign with the words, "Here anyone can live free." A snow-white virgin came from the house and said, "Welcome, queen," then led her inside. She untied the small boy from her back, held him to her breast so he could drink, and then laid him in a beautiful made-up bed. Then the poor woman said, "How did you know I am a queen?" The white virgin answered, "I am an angel, sent by God to take care of you and your child." She stayed in this house for 7 years, and was well taken care of. And through the grace of God and her own piety, her chopped-off hands grew back. The king finally came home from the battlefield, and the first thing he wanted to do was see his wife and their child. The old mother began to weep. "You wicked man, why did you write to me that I was to put 2 innocent souls to death?" She showed him the 2 letters that the evil one had counterfeited. Then she continued to speak. "I did what you ordered, and showed him as proof the eyes and the tongue. Then the king began to weep even more bitterly for his poor wife and his little son, until the old woman had mercy and said to him, "Be satisfied that she is alive. I secretly had a doe killed and took the proofs from it. I tied your wife's child onto her back and told her to go into the wide world, and she had promised never to come back here because you were so angry with her." The king said, "I will go as far as the sky is blue." And then he went outside and it was overcast, so he gave up, and will neither eat nor drink until I have found my dear wife and my child again, provided that in the meantime they have not died or perished from hunger, in which case I probably shouldn't die or perish from hunger. Then the king traveled about for nearly 7 years, searching in all the stone cliffs and caves, but he did not find her, and he thought that she had perished. He traveled for 7 years without eating? That's impressive. The next line. He neither ate nor drank during the entire time, but God kept him alive. Finally, he came to a great forest, where he found a little house with a sign containing the words, "Anyone can live. Here anyone can live free." The white virgin came out, took him by the hand, led him inside, and said, "Welcome, king," then asked him where he had come from. He answered, "I have been traveling about for nearly 7 years looking for my wife and her child, but I cannot find them." The angel offered him something to eat and drink, but he did not take it, wanting only to rest a little. He lay down to sleep, covering his face with a cloth. Then the angel went into the room where the queen was sitting with her son, whom she normally called filled with grief. Okay, that's really dumb. Someone's going to come up to me and say, "Filled with Cheetos." That's my Indian name. The angel said to her, "Go into the next room with your child. Your husband has come." She went to where he was lying, and the cloth fell from his face. Then she said, "Filled with grief, pick up the cloth for your father and put it up." Your father? Oh, the child is called Filled with Grief. Okay, that's a dick name. This is terrible. Good thing he's a prince. Filled with grief, put up the cloth for your father and put it over his face again. The child picked it up and put it over his face again. The king heard this in his sleep and let the cloth fall again. Then the boy grew impatient and said, "Mother, dear, how can I cover my father's face? I have no father in this world. I have learned to pray, 'Our Father which art in heaven,' and you have said that my father is in heaven, and that he is our dear God. How can I know such a wild man? He is not my father." Hearing this, the king arose and asked who she was. She said, "I am your wife, and this is your son, filled with grief." "You name my son what?" He saw her living hands and said, "My wife had silver hands." She said, "Our merciful God has caused my natural hands to grow back." The angel went into the other room, brought back the silver hands, and showed them to him. Now he saw for sure that it was his dear wife and dear child, and he kissed them and rejoiced and said, "A heavy stone has fallen from my heart." Then the angel of God gave them all something to eat, and then they went back home to his old mother. There was great joy everywhere, and the king and queen conducted their wedding ceremony once again, and they lived happily until their blessed end. That's a nice story. Filled with grief. This is my son, depressive episode. This is my daughter, bipolar disorder. And we're expecting another child soon called schizophrenia. By the way, on page 579 is just the last part of the story that is only called The Turnip. Well, I mean, at least that one's not like full of incest and weird stuff. It's kind of it's nice. All that stuff about like silver hands and uh, devils, and also the stuff about having to be clean so the devil can't take you. Also, there's some like really cool art for it. Like if you look it up on Google Images. I like to do that sometimes. I like to look up weird things on Google Images. That's my hobby. All right. I'm kind of tired, so I think I'm gonna just do maybe one more because I've been streaming for like 2 hours, and also I'm tired. I think I'll just do four brothers, four skillful brothers, four skillful brothers, which is actually 4 pages long, 1 page for each brother. So that's good. Uh, all right. 574. 572. Okay, last story. There was once a poor man who had 4 sons, and when they were grown up, he said to them, "My dear children, you must now go out into the world, for I have nothing to give you. So set out, and go to some distance and learn a trade, and see how you can make your way." So the 4 brothers took their sticks, bade their father farewell, and went through the town gate together. When they had travelled about for some time, they came to a crossway which branched off in 4 different directions. Then said the eldest, "Here must we separate, but on this day in 4 years we will meet again at this spot, and in the meantime we will seek our fortunes." Then each of them went his own way. And the eldest met a man, who asked him where he was going, and what he was intending to do. "I want to learn a trade," he replied. Then the other said, "Come with me and be a thief." "No," he answered, "that is no longer regarded as a reputable trade. And the end of it is that one of us has to swing on the gallows." "Oh," said the man, "you need not be afraid of the gallows. I will only teach you how to get such things as no other man could ever lay hold of, and no one will ever detect you." So he allowed himself to be talked into it, and while the man became an accomplished thief, and so dexterous that nothing was safe from him if he once desired to have it. The second brother met a man who put the same question to him, what he wanted to learn in the world. "I don't know yet," he answered. "Then come with me and be an astronomer. There is nothing better than that, for nothing is hid from you." He liked the idea, and became such a skillful astronomer, that when he had learnt everything, he was about to travel onwards. His master gave him a telescope and said to him, "With that you can see whatever takes place either on earth or in heaven, and nothing can remain concealed from you." A huntsman took the third brother into training, and gave him such excellent instruction in everything which related to huntsmanship that he became an experienced hunter. When he went his way, his master gave him a gun and said, "It will never fail you. Whatsoever you aim at, you are certain to hit." The youngest brother also met a man who spoke to him and inquired what his intentions were. "Would you not like to be a tailor?" said he. "Not that I know of," said the youth, "sitting doubled up from morning till night, driving the needle and the goose backwards and forwards. It is not to my taste." "Oh, but you are speaking ignorance," answered the man. "With me you would learn a very different kind of tailoring, which is respectable and proper, and for the most part very honourable." So he let himself be persuaded, and went with the man, and learnt his trade from the very beginning. When they parted, the man gave the youth a needle, and said, "With this you can sew together whatever is given you, whether it is soft as an egg or as hard as steel, and it will all become one piece of stuff, so that no seam will be visible." When the appointed 4 years were over, the 4 brothers arrived at the same location at the same time at the crossroads, embraced and kissed each other, and returned home to their father. "So now," said he, quite delighted, "the wind has blown you back to me again." They told him of all that had happened to him, and that each had learned his own trade. Now they were sitting just in front of the house under a large tree, and the father said, "I will put you all to the test, and see what you can do." He looked up and said to his second son, "Between branches—" Why did he skip to his second? Whatever. Between the branches up at the top of this tree, there is a chaffinch's nest. Tell me how many eggs there are in it." The astronomer took his glass and looked up and said, "There are 5." Then the father said to the eldest, "Fetch the eggs down without disturbing the bird which is sitting hatching them." The skilful thief climbed up and took the 5 eggs from beneath the bird, which never observed what he was doing, and remained quietly sitting where she was, brought them down to his father. The father took them and put them on each corner of the table, and the 5th in the middle, and said to the huntsman, "With one shot you shall shoot me the 5 eggs in two, through the middle." The huntsman aimed, and shot the eggs, all 5 as the father had desired, and that at one shot. He certainly must have had some some of the powder for shooting round corners. "Now it's your turn," said the father to the 4th son. "You shall sew the eggs back together again, and the young birds that are inside them as well, and you must do it so they are not hurt by the shot." The tailor brought his needle and sewed them up as his father asked. And when he had done this, the thief had to climb the tree again and carry them to the nest, and put them back again under the bird without her being aware of it. The bird sat her full time, and after a few days the young ones crept out, and they had a red line round their cheeks where they had been sewn together by a red line round their necks where they had been sewn together by the tailor. "Well," said the old man to his sons, "I begin to think you are worth more than green clover. You have used your time well, and learned something good. I can't say which of you deserves the most praise. That will be proved if you have but an early opportunity of using your talents." Not long after this, there was a great uproar in the country, for the king's daughter was carried off by a dragon. The king was full of trouble about it, both by day and night, and caused it to be proclaimed that whosoever brought her back should have her to wife. The 4 brothers said to each other, "This would be a fine opportunity for us to show what we can do," and resolved to go forth together and liberate the king's daughter. "I will soon know where she is," said the astronomer, and looked at the telescope. "I see her already. She is far away from here on a rock in the sea, and the dragon is beside her, watching her." Then he went to the king and asked for a ship for himself and his brothers, and sailed with them over the sea until they came to the rock. There the king's daughter was sitting in it, the dragon was lying asleep on her lap. The huntsman said, "I dare not fire. I should kill the beautiful maiden at the same time." "Then I will try my art," said the thief, and he crept thither and stole her away from under the dragon, so quietly and dexterously that the monster never remarked it, but went on snoring. Full of joy, they hurried off with her on board ship, and steered out into the open sea. But the dragon, who when he awoke had found no princess there, followed them, and came snorting angrily through the air. Just as he was circling above the ship, and was about to descend on it, the huntsman shouldered his gun, and shot him to the heart. The monster fell down dead, but was so large and powerful that his fall shattered the whole ship. Fortunately, however, they had laid hold of a couple planks, and swam about in the wide sea. Then again they were in great peril, but the tailor, who was not idle, took his wondrous needle, and with a few stitches sewed the planks together. And they seated themselves upon them, and collected together all their fragments of the vessel. Then he sewed these so skilfully together, that in a very short time the ship was once more seaworthy, and they could go home in safety. When the king once more saw his daughter, there was great rejoicings. He said to his brothers, "One of you shall have her to wife, but which of you it is to be, you must settle amongst yourselves." Then a warm contest arose among them, for each of them preferred his own claim. The astronomer said, "If I had not seen the princess, all your arts would have been useful, so she is mine." And the thief said, "What would have been the use of your seeing, if I had not got her away with the dragon, so she is mine?" The huntsman said, "You and your princess, and all of you, would have been torn to pieces by the dragon if my ball had not hit them, so she is mine." The tailor said, "And if I by my art had not sewn the ship together, you would have all been miserably drowned, so she is mine." Then the king uttered this saying, "Each of you has an equal right, and as all of you cannot have the maiden, none of you shall have her, but I will give to each of you as a reward half a kingdom." The brothers were pleased with this decision, and said, "It is better thus than that we should be at variance with each other." Then each of them received half a kingdom, and they lived with their father in the greatest happiness as long as it pleased God. Yeah, that's a nice little story. A nice little bit about using your impossible talents to mutilate birds and sew them back together. Like normal people do. All right, well, I am very tired. Uh, 2.5 hours been streaming, and also I'm very lazy, and I'm stumbling over my words and all this stuff. But thank you all for coming, Shelby. Thank you always for your support. Kimmery, nice to have you on the stream. I'm just going to ignore that pun, but thank you both for coming, and I'm gonna try and go to bed, or at least stare at the ceiling angrily until the sun rises. Thanks for coming. Good night.